The list is compiled by the editors of GQ.
But according to GQ magazine, the Bible is among the most overrated books of all time.
The Pew Research Center is the go-to nonprofit for learning about a lot of things, including America's religious landscape. And this time, they asked a very simple follow-up to their standard question, do you believe in God? At the Pew Center, for years they've asked, do you believe in God? This year, 80% said yes, 19% no. Then they decided to ask Americans something else.
We're interested in knowing when people say they believe in God, what do they mean? How do they picture God?
They took two broad notions of God. First, the biblical God we'll call the Morgan Freeman.
Who are you?
I'm God.
You're God.
Yes. And I want you, Evan Baxter, to build an ark.
The other notion of God is a higher power or spiritual force we'll call the Kenobi.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
Freemans and Kenobis view life very differently. Remember the 80% yes, 19% no answers? The Freeman-Kenobi distinction is far less monolithic. 56% of Americans said, yes, I believe in the biblical, the Morgan Freeman God. 23% of Americans said, yes, I believe in a God like what Obi-Wan Kenobi describes. And then 9% of Americans said, no, I don't believe in God, but I'm pretty much with Kenobi. Combine those two, and with rounding, a third of Americans fit the Kenobi category. 10% still reject both notions of God. All right, it should have updated to show you that 33% of Americans actually fall into that category of believing in a higher power, a spiritual force. And so that is a huge subsection of the American public, much bigger than they've seen before.
And GQ magazine is getting hit with some Bible backlash. The magazine has listed the Bible as one of 21 overrated books you don't need to bother reading. It's the greatest bestseller in the history of the printed word, but GQ calls it repetitive, contradictory, foolish, and even at times ill-intentioned.
Even if you don't believe that this is an inspired word of God, in the last 50 years, 3.9 billion people have read this book. 3.9 billion Bibles have been published. That dwarfs every other book that has been read in the last 50 years. Now, and this is the last 50 years, this Bible is almost 2,000 years old.
In an article by the editors of GQ, the men's magazine, blasts the Holy Bible, declares it a book you don't have to read, and suggests an alternative. GQ's review of the Holy Bible begins with a snarky slight of Christians.
Say this, quote, the Holy Bible is rated very highly by all the people who supposedly live by it, but who actually have not read it. Those who have read it know there are some good parts, but overall, it is certainly not the finest thing that man has ever produced. It is repetitive,
self-contradictory, skip that, foolish, and even at times ill-intentioned.
It gets worse. This was all on Friday, the day before on Thursday. Jews News, interesting, published a very interesting and, might I add, very well-written article titled, New Yorker to Christians, we don't want your kind around here. In it, the writer cites a New Yorker article written by Dan Piepenbring, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who writes that the Chick-fil-A brand's arrival here, speaking of New York, feels like an infiltration. in no small part because of its pervasive Christian traditionalism. Oh, no. Oh, say it isn't so. You'll forgive my cynicism. It's a sanctified cynicism. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it, so.
The New Yorker slamming Chick-fil-A for its Christian values, saying in an article titled "Chick-fil-A's Creepy Infiltration of New York City," the brand's arrival here feels like an infiltration in no small part because of its persuasive Christian traditionalism.
Its headquarters, speaking of Chick-fil-A, in Atlanta, is adorned with Bible verses and a statue of Jesus washing a disciple's feet. It must surprise the Christians of New York that they are infiltrators in their own community. But in Pipe and Bring's world, any outsiders must be shunned. He further claims its commercial evangelical messaging are inflected with suburban piety. Elsewhere, he's scandalized by the fact that the restaurant's corporate purpose still begins with the words, wait for it, to glorify God. Wow.
I mean, this is hypocrisy. It's media hypocrisy at its best. And here's the problem. The New Yorker, a liberal, obviously a liberal magazine and all of that, this is what they do. It's the latte-sipping crowd. They talk with other liberals, and all of a sudden it becomes this narrative out there. Christian traditionalism. You mean, hold on, Judeo-Christian values that define this country from its inception? Look, the article is so ridiculous on so many different fronts, but just take this. If this guy is going to write an article like this, well, how about, I don't know, maybe he should stop using money, because the last time I checked, "In God We Trust" is on our currency, and we can go on and on.
And that proselytism thrums below the surface of the Fulton Street restaurant, which has the homespun ambience of a megachurch. Contempt drips from every word of these sentences. It's merely Pipe and Bring's bleeding admission that he cannot handle anything reminiscent of the great bugbear of our time. You know what it is? American evangelicalism.
We do know from our other surveys that the United States has been growing less religious in recent decades.
Yeah, and they were accusing him of goaltending. Even if it was, the three would have still won the game for him.
There you go. There you go. The king always coming in clutch. So we all know somebody who worships Her Highness Queen Bee, Beyonce Knowles. Maybe me, one of those people. But one church in California is taking it to a new level. Francisco's Grace Cathedral held a unique mass that attracted at least 900 people.
Are you ready to actually worship Beyonce? San Francisco Cathedral will hold a special Beyonce Mass. Grace Cathedral announced that it'll host a mass devoted to Beyonce's music and to her accomplishment. This comes after the singer's popular performance at Coachella at the Arts Festival on Saturday night.
San Francisco's Grace Cathedral looked and sounded more like a concert than a church for a first-of-its-kind Beyonce Mass.
It was amazing. It was one of the best spiritual experiences I've ever had.
Welcome back, everybody. It is 20 minutes before 8 o'clock. Now, earlier this month, on Wednesday, the 4th of April, our anchor Palesa Kubisi did a studio interview with Pastor Daniel Paladi, who wrote an article entitled, "Do You Want Miracle Money?" Now, that discussion also focused on South Africa and the church, where we made reference to the confirmed investigation by the Hawks Crime Fighting Unit into Prophet Shepard Bushiri for allegedly transporting an estimated 15 million rand out of South Africa to his country of Malawi in his private jet. Well, there we have it. A very good morning to Professor Shepard Bushiri, and welcome to Morning Live. Thank you so much. Oh, Prophet, I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
And welcome to Morning Live.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So much has been said about you. So many allegations have been leveled against you. What do you say to those allegations?
Wow. It's quite amazing, actually. I was actually told, by that time I was in the USA, I was told actually about the articles and allegations that you are being investigated over issues of money laundering, where you get 15 million every month. I was like, wow, that's a lot of money, you know.
So of all the businesses that you have in South Africa, one of the biggest that generates the most income from you, for you rather, is your church, the Enlightened Christian Church. Is that correct?
No, the church is the business. The church is not a business at all.
So if you say that you don't run your church as a business, is that correct?
Yes.
So then how then do you explain congregants paying 5,000 rand for a one-on-one consultation with you on spiritual matters? How do you explain congregants paying 25,000 rand of sharing the same table with you at a gala dinner?
Wow. I think the gala dinner issue was just the first story. They have to pay for accommodation, food, and transportation.
So many people have been saying that they've been paying 5,000 rand to see you
that's not true.
On a spiritual basis. Thousands, actually, I have it on record that so many people pay money to see you. So are you saying that your congregants are lying?
Not that they are lying, but as I said, to say there's no any person on earth who ever paid me money to see me. They pay money for logistics.
If you say they're not lying, then it's true that they actually pay you 5,000 rand.
Yeah, the 5,000 which they pay, as I said, to say is for logistics. You see,
what kind of
the gospel is cheap, but it's expensive. If people come to see me from America, from Europe, from England, I don't think I have the capacity of keeping them and paying for the accommodation. So they have to, it's actually logical. Every person, when you travel, when you go to another country, you are supposed to carry money for pocket money, for hotel bills and other things.
I'm still not getting a clear answer from you. Let's put our focus to South African matters, like South African congregants, saying that they pay 5,000 rand, and I've got some witnesses, and I do have it on record, that they actually paid 5,000 rand to see you. What is it that they pay for?
Sir, as I've said, to say the money which people pay is for international visitors program. We have international visitors program running at our church.
We continue our discussion with Prophet Shepherd Bushiri, the leader of the Enlightened Christian Church gathering on the Hawks confirmed investigation that he transports an estimated 15 million rand out of South Africa to his country of Malawi in his private jet. So you pay people to give false testimonies, and you perform false miracles in your church. Is that correct?
Wow, I would say, number one, I've never performed any miracle in my life. So I don't think I would answer that question, because in my church, like your church and other church, if a person is healed or delivered, it's not.
Hang on a second, you've never performed miracles in your life?
I've never. But Jesus
What
does.
about the testimonies that have been given by your congregants that's saying that I've been healed by Pastor Bushiri? So much happened in my life because of Pastor Bushiri?
I'm not the healer. Jesus is the healer. And I've never healed any person. I've never delivered any person. Jesus does. I will tell you, Jesus does. So if those miracles are fake, then let's say we are attacking what Jesus Christ does. And not in my church. Let's say in every church, Jesus Christ heals. And
what about the whistleblowers then? What do you say to those claims?
Well, you know, when you're on top, you become a topic. I'll say that.
You bought your daughter a R1 million car. Yet there are thousands of impoverished members of your church in South Africa. There are thousands of impoverished members of a church in Malawi. How do you justify that?
There's no justification in buying something for your child. I don't even think you can justify why you bought your child a toy or anything else.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So
but I'm
justify.
talking about the financial state of many of your congregants in South Africa. They're impoverished. They take loans to pay 5,000 rand to consult with you. They pay loans to come to your church. Some of them are even impoverished.
You are right.
But we don't have much. We don't have much time. But then, under what circumstances do you request money from your church members?
Your pardon again?
Under what circumstances do you request your church members to pay money?
I don't get your question rightly.
Under what circumstances do you demand or request offering or tithes from your members of the congregation?
What circumstances? What does it mean? What's the meaning of the question?
Do you require your members of the congregation to pay tithes or to pay offering?
Of course.
And if so, under what circumstances?
I think it's a good question you've asked me. As I said, everything is perfect in order. So the church has got its own wing, how it manages finances and everything else.
Prophet Shepherd Bushiri, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
No, thank you so much.
It's important to understand that everything we see happening in the world today, especially here in our beloved US of A, was foretold in the Bible. It's thought that over 1/3 of the Bible is prophecy. Think about that. Let that sink in.
Those who have read it know there are some good parts, but overall, it is certainly not
the finest thing that man has ever produced. The problem is man didn't produce it.